Does the Bible teach that a man must confess Jesus Christ before others in order to be saved? This is the reason that many preachers will give a forward invitation, because they want to fulfill the verse. They get people to confess Christ before others. But is this really what the Bible is teaching? Remember, anything that requires more than just believing on Christ or trusting Him as your Savior, then it cannot be referring to salvation. It has to be referring to something else. The Bible does not contradict itself. The verse that we're referring to is found in the book of Matthew in chapter 10 and verse 32 and 33. Let me read those two verses to you. Verse 32 says, "Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father, which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father, which is in heaven." So it looks like you've got to confess Christ in order to be accepted by the Father. But if you don't and you deny Him, He's going to deny you. So it's generally understood that this must be referring to salvation. So you can't be saved unless you confess. Now, is this really what these scriptures are talking about? In the book of Matthew in chapter 10, there is the command given for the disciples to go over the land of Israel and preach the gospel and so on. And He says, now when you go, He's not talking about them getting saved by doing this. He's talking about others hearing from them. And so He makes a statement. Don't be afraid because of the way people are going to respond. So He makes a statement in verse 25. "It is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his own household?" So He tells them, look what they do to me. And if they do this to me, look what they're going to do to you. So He says, fear not. And that's in verse 26. Fear them not, therefore. So don't be afraid of what people call you. Then He makes a statement in verse 28. "And fear not them which kill the body," or what they might do to you. Then He says in verse 31, "Fear ye not, therefore ye are more valued than many sparrows." Understanding that your personal life is of great value to the Lord. You have value to God. The message they were to proclaim has great value. So don't cheapen any of this. Believe that it's important and you have something important to deliver. So then He tells them, if you will do this, this is what my Father will do. And He says, "Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men," because this is exactly what He told them to do. Go and confess before men. Not to be saved, but that they may hear the message that they were to deliver. So you wonder now, is this talking about salvation or service, and how would you know? It's a good question, but let me give you this. In the book of Matthew in chapter 10, He makes this statement. He says in verse 40, "He that receiveth you receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me." So He's talking about people who will hear and receive it, and those that will not hear it. They will reject it. So He says in verse 41, "He that receiveth a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward. And he that receiveth a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward." So when you look at the scriptures, remember, salvation is always a gift. And service means you do something for the Lord. And God is going to reward you. So we're not talking about salvation, we're talking about service. It's what you do after you are saved, not to be saved. Rewards are earned. So then He makes a statement in verse 42, "And whosoever shall give to drink unto one of these little ones a cup of cold water only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward." So we're talking about God's people taking God's message so that others can hear. And God says, if you will confess me before men, I'll confess you before the Father. But if you deny me before men, I will deny you before the Father. Deny them what? Not salvation, because we're not talking about salvation. We're talking about rewards. If you will confess Christ here, he will reward you there. And if you deny Christ here, he will deny you the rewards. So doesn't it make sense? Not only to trust Christ as your Savior, know you're going to heaven when you die, but yes, with our mouths, we are supposed to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ so that other people can be saved. And God is going to reward you when you get to heaven. And this is why he says, every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. That's for rewards. Salvation is the gift of God. It's not of works, lest any man should boast. I hope that helps. Thank you, and God bless.